All right, guys, I want to welcome everybody. Happy New Year to everyone. This is the weekly Nomberg Law Live on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Central, and I hope everybody had a safe and healthy and happy holiday season. And we are back running as ever on Tuesdays. And I've got my friend, attorney Tripp Watson with the Watson Law Firm here in Birmingham as my guest. Good to see you, Tripp.
How's it going?
It is good. Happy New Year to you and your family, and hope all's well in your world.
It's great to be rolling into 2021 with 2020 in the hindsight, the rear view.
Frankly, just to say that lifts some spirits, I know, but I want to thank you for making some time today. And we're going to talk about business in Alabama. And there's so many topics to talk about, but Tripp and his firm do such a great job of notifying the public through social media, advising his clients, and he's just got a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things business wise. But before we jump into anything specific on that, Tripp, share a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Yeah, so I'm from Birmingham, born and raised. Went to law school, always expecting that I would be doing something in the business realm. And so, unlike a lot of attorneys, I did the dual track program, did a JD MBA at here in town at Sanford at Cumberland. And for the last 10 years, I've been helping business owners and entrepreneurs get their businesses started, get them built up and grown, and then ultimately shooting for a potential exit if everything works out well. And we do a little bit of everything in between. So transactional work, drafting contracts, to creating businesses and structuring the businesses, to even litigating over them. Probably about half of the litigation work that we do are partnership disputes, where one partner will get sideways with another partner. So it's brief overview of the Watson firm.
Well, it's such a specialized area of the law that I know lawyers who may be well-meaning to help out friends or potential new clients may get into this kind of stuff. But kind of like in my world, in the work comp world, you find out very quickly that it is a specialized area of the law. And if you don't know the current trends or what's going on with the newest laws, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt very, very quickly. So I'm going to put, Tripp, I'm going to put a link to your firm's website in our comments in the show notes so folks can reach out to you. But I guess as a way of jumping off, I hate that a lot of our conversations that I have on these Tuesdays somehow are mentioning the pandemic and COVID and the impact, but it's the world. That's just, we can't avoid it. Hopefully we're not as a commentary here, but hopefully we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine on its way and here. But where I want to start a little bit, Tripp, is we've now had 9, 10 months of having to deal with this, and the world has changed. From a business perspective, give us just an overview, a bird's eye view of how some of your practice has changed and how you've had to advise clients from a business standpoint, and then we'll kind of narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, so a big overarching belief that I have is echoed by a lot of professional financial advisors, is that ultimately wealth and success is created in volatility. Times of change, while they are stressful, are opportunities for businesses and business owners to capitalize on the changes. And unfortunately, if you've kind of been set in your ways and how things are done, it might be very difficult for you to get out of that routine to capitalize on those changes. But now are the times that we're seeing a lot of folks really capitalize on these changes and figuring out ways of doing new things better and differently, sometimes at better cost, oftentimes at better margins. And so you're seeing a lot of businesses that are established businesses being much more nimble, thinking of new ways of operating. But you're also seeing a lot of new businesses being formed right now to respond to some of the challenges that we've seen with COVID, with the resulting stay-at-home orders and everything in between. So I've been very optimistic with what I've seen and a lot of the ingenuity and innovation that my clients have come up with and how they've responded to it. conveniently, I think for us in our firm, we were always designed to be a decentralized law firm. So when the COVID quarantines hit, we didn't miss a beat. Now we dealt like everybody with lack of childcare issues and some of the transitions, but we stayed open. We were still working. We were working from home. We were working remotely, and still, a heavy percentage of our team works remotely on any given day. But we've stayed open the entire time.
Yeah, we too we're a little bit ahead of the curve. Working remotely has been a thing for several members of our firm for quite a while. So that was not a big transition. Dealing with Zoom or whatever system that you use, we've been doing those type meetings for quite a while. But I guess where I want to start in Alabama, Tripp, is what type of industries, with so many businesses now going virtual, online, telecommuting, whatever you want to call it, and getting away from the brick and mortar traditional spaces, whether it's a restaurant or it could be a law firm, whatever it is. What kind of trends, what are you seeing in Alabama? What areas of business are making those big transitions, or is it just a broad stroke of almost all industries?
Well, what we've seen is what we've kind of had what we call a bimodal distribution. Kind of, you've got one group of folks that are just doing incredibly well, and then you have another group of folks that are just doing incredibly poorly. And there's very little in between. And the problem with that is that in a lot of businesses, law firms being one of them, but a lot of service-based businesses can work remotely. If you are tied to a physical location, my office is based downtown Birmingham. We've seen a lot of restaurants struggle because a lot of the foot traffic that they would normally get is just not there. So you've seen a lot of innovation with them figuring out delivery options. We've seen full pivots in their ideas and their strategies. To even recalculate the entire menu so that it would be more advantageous for delivery. So there's a lot of changes that you're seeing. Some are able to be flexible and respond to it, and some can't. And unfortunately, some of that's what we call kind of the structural downturn issues that you got. And it's very difficult to deal with those problems. So unfortunately, we are going to see some of those businesses that don't survive. And that's going to be unfortunate, but you hope kind of from the ashes of that, some new business ideas will come out of it. But a lot of businesses, and I would even dare to say that given how heavy our economy is now service-based, we're seeing a lot of businesses being able to figure out ways to work remotely to at least survive, if not thrive. Alabama is not unique in a lot of ways, but it is unique because of our heavy population in rural areas. And the lack of high-speed internet is hurting some of those areas. So unfortunately, this is one of those things where some of the impoverished areas and rural areas are continuing to have even more issues. But all that with a grain of salt, because you've got major metropolitan areas like San Francisco and New York, where Birmingham is increasingly being one of these COVID flight cities that people are coming to because you can buy a house very inexpensively in the suburbs or even in downtown and be able to work remotely from your office in New York or San Francisco, Atlanta, any of these other very high priced areas. So you're seeing a lot of folks moving back to Birmingham or moving to Birmingham for the first time who are kind of fleeing from some of those high density COVID areas.
Yeah, I'd love to see the statistics say 6 months from now about that very issue. Has Alabama gained its population, and where are the folks from? I'm sure the statistics will come out at some point. Mm-hmm. It also seems to be that now there is such a premium for businesses, particularly say in the service industry, like a restaurant. That's one of the restaurant industry is so highly publicized because it's hard enough that a huge percentage of restaurants go after 2 or 3 years in a normal world. And I'm sure it's even a greater percentage during the last year or so. But those that have been able to stay open and now not just survive, but somewhat thriving, it seems like they do the very best with customer service. Mm-hmm. Whether it's providing curbside service or just getting the word out through social media, showing what they're doing to stay safe for the public. Are there other industries that you're seeing that have, I guess, refocused or doubled down, if you will, on customer service to be able to show those people who are truly shut in or just don't want to get out in public for whatever various reasons, they're having to do that now.
Oh yeah, we're seeing that I mean, we see it in the legal industry. We see it in a lot of other professional practices where so much of the interaction that we would have with our clients and our customers would be in person. We're now relying on technology. I mean, can you imagine doing what we're doing today in 2008? We'd never be able to do video chats. We'd never been able to do Zoom. That I know it's not the same thing as human interaction, but being able to see somebody and look them in the eye and be able to talk to them when they could be another state away is a tremendous advantage that we have with current technology. And so I think you're seeing a lot of businesses that are capitalizing on that specifically because we now have the technology that I can meet with a client and we can meet for 30 minutes and they don't have to drive to downtown and find parking and everything else. They can meet with me over we use Microsoft Teams, and I can send them a link. They can log in. It's secure. I can show them drafts of the documents that we're working on, pull up documents to look at, say, hey, what does this mean? What are you doing here? And we can be on this literally the same page. And you're seeing a lot of businesses capitalize on some of the technology that's out there. So I know I'm using that word a lot, but oftentimes it's trying to find those opportunities. And sometimes it's just being 10% better than your competition in a certain way. And, whether that's allowing for easy video communications or just another touch point that you can provide for your customers, that's a real big sticky factor right now for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, that's when all of this so quickly came to a head, if you will, in February, March. But by April, May, specifically, or certainly by June, we had, from our firm standpoint, just gone through these. How are we going to make it the easiest for our clients and potential clients to be able to communicate with us? So we added a texting number. We added an online, you can sign it with your finger on your phone option for documents. A lot of clients were used to FaceTime on their phones. So we created some videos to show them how to use Zoom and Teams and other audio video conferencing. So everything that we could think of or that we read about, we've been trying that out. I have not met with a client in person since March. And it's just worked out that way. Our office has not been open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been able to just figure it out. But I think you're right. People are just using their ingenuity. They're just being creative. And I know you and I keep talking about what we know best in the law industry, and restaurants are certainly probably the most seen in social media, how they're dealing with it. But from a retail standpoint, I've seen lots of creativity. I've seen some, I don't know if they're owned by the same companies, but in our state, I've seen where certain restaurants are next door or nearby to certain retail companies, and they'll share the curb space in front of each other's business as a way of kind of cross promoting their businesses. So I don't know if you've seen that kind of thoughts or things that have occurred, but that's just one thing that caught my eye recently.
I have seen a lot of cities in Birmingham and generally and throughout the area pop up a whole bunch of pickup only spaces in the. So that's been fantastic. That a lot of businesses are figuring out ways to encourage folks to just drop in, pick something up, and still help the retailers, knowing that folks are not going to necessarily be coming in and shopping. But I mean, we follow a bunch of our own clients on Instagram and whatnot, and how they've been so innovative in showing off the goods that they have available and how they're able to sell those is fantastic. The technology that we have that allows you to see basically how clothing will fit on a particular person is amazing. I've even seen some technology that's out there that you can, I don't know, privacy is a whole issue with it, but you can even input your own body dimensions into it, and it will show how the clothing will drape on your body, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's some of that AI stuff that just gets a little bit too close at times. But
yeah.
I know it's there, and I know it's not going away. It's only going to
Oh yeah.
get better, more in, I don't know if invasive is the right word, but more prevalent into, to at least through social media, digital age that we're in. Guys, I'm talking with Tripp Watson, Watson Law Firm in Birmingham. Tripp and his firm focus on business in Alabama and outside of the state. They look at the trends, they advise clients about setting up businesses and the like. And we're just talking in general about business in Alabama and how the trends, what's going on. And Tripp, one thing I wanted to share with you, one thing that we have is a very active YouTube channel. And we put videos on there, not daily, but every week, 3 to 5 to maybe 10 videos about various areas of the law and interests that we think that the public may find. With more and more people being home and on their devices, we just felt that we wanted to provide a little bit of more of a public service to people who may have questions or concerns in our area. And I've read that some of the trends from a marketing standpoint is video is king. And from other businesses, other industries, have you seen where other businesses have taken advantage of that or increased their social media presence in order to be appealing to potential clients or customers?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that for numerous reasons, video is really driving a lot of internet traffic these days. Obviously, if you don't know already, Google is putting a very high priority in search on video. Facebook does the exact same thing through Facebook and Instagram and their other outlets. And the reason is because video a lot of times drives that sticky viewing where I may not want to read a wall of text, but I could at least plug in a video and be able to see something and learn something typically a lot easier than I might otherwise read it. And so we're seeing a lot of businesses that are capitalizing on, especially in areas where there is physical product businesses where you can actually see the product and being able to look around it and understand what it does. But we're also seeing it in knowledge-based industries like our profession, the law, because a lot of times, what we do is such a high level sometimes. What we do as attorneys, what accountants do as accountants or financial advisors, and clients oftentimes come in from a very, very lay level that they want to know enough, but they don't necessarily want to know everything. So you want to be able to get in and understand it. I remember a few years ago, I was talking to a car salesman, and he said he remembered the very first time that a customer came in and knew more about the car than he did based upon all the options that were on the website. And I saw him a few years later, and he was like, that's 80% of our customers that come in know more about the features that they care about. And we're basically just, helping them close the deal and making them all realize that this is what they always really wanted. So I think we're seeing that the more information that businesses and anybody puts out about their products so that clients can be informed customers and understand that, I think is very critical, because it also not only informs the client so that they can make an informed decision. I mean, as you know, the classic conversation is, how do you tell a lawyer's good? How do you figure out one lawyer is better than another? We're required by law to say no lawyer is better than another. We can't advertise it, even that. But making sure that somebody can understand and make informed decisions. How do I pick a car? A lot of people have a lot of difficulty figuring out what's in this brain space sometimes, and building that trust factor through video is massive.
Yeah, no, and I was going to answer your question is just ask him. Just ask him. But I want to welcome, we've got some friends and folks watching. Philip Burke, my dear friend, who's actually in Costa Rica. So thank you, Philip, for tuning in. Flavia Smith, Susan Sampson, Travis Smith, Christian Coleman. We got a whole bunch of folks on here. So if you got questions or comments for Tripp or about our topic today, just throw them in the comments and I'll make sure that Tripp sees them. Tripp, I do want to ask you, let's focus on Alabama a little bit. If you want to narrow it down to Birmingham, that's fine too. It seems that with what we've dealt with this past year from an economy standpoint, and I don't want to make this a political discussion very much because that could go a whole different way. But I guess a broad question would be is, how is business in Alabama? Are we doing okay, or are we struggling, or where do we fit in the big picture?
So, based on the statistics, it looks like we're weathering the coronavirus pandemic fairly well for a lot of those reasons that I've talked about before. You still get the bimodal issues where you've got some folks that are really, really hurting, and then you've got some folks that are just absolutely killing it. But Alabama generally is seeing a lot of influx of capital investment from outside of the state as people realize that, oh, maybe some of these very dense urban centers are not necessarily the best places to be. In states like California and New York, for instance, we've seen a large amount of population growth far preceding, or I should say negative population growth, people moving out of those states into other states. We've seen that long before 2020. And so I think kind of the theme of the pandemic is that it's accelerating a lot of trends that we were already seeing. So there was already population movement away from high density states into more flyover and southeastern states. And you were already seeing people move to remote work and other types of flexible work schedules. And COVID, all that did was basically take what we were going to be doing for the next 10 years and force it into about 10 months. So you're seeing a lot of volatility, but it's really not doing anything that the economy wasn't already doing. It's just on a super accelerated pace. And of course, that's stressful. But we're seeing a lot of that change, and it's benefited Alabama in a lot of ways because we're a relatively low cost state. We're a very friendly business state. We routinely rank among the top in the country as far as friendly business environments, Alabama generally, but also Birmingham. And a lot of the laws that we have are designed to encourage folks to move into Alabama. Very low taxes, very low cost base, very friendly business laws. So I think the trends towards benefiting the Birmingham metro area, but Alabama generally, are going to continue. You're still seeing a lot of industrial growth in Alabama. You've still got we've got a very unique kind of skilled blue collar workforce that works in a lot of these factories, and that's continuing to grow because it's been such an educational priority for several governors in the state.
Well, gosh, look at how many auto industry manufacturers and the businesses that are part of that throughout our state. That's been going on for 20 plus years now, and even more have coming in. But one of the things that kind of excited me was about a year or two ago, we got an Amazon presence in Bessemer, and the old Century Plaza just down the street from my office in Irondale is about to build a distribution center, and that's 2 miles from my office. I don't know how quickly I can get stuff sent. But from a bigger picture standpoint, I think that's very encouraging, because how many thousands of jobs are generated from just Amazon alone.
Mm-hmm. And that has downstream effects too, because there are other businesses that have to service Amazon. They do things that they don't want to do in-house. So there's downstream effects from that are huge. I mean, we talk about the Mercedes, we talk about the Toyotas, we talk about those major manufacturing plants, but you don't talk about the other dozens of ancillary plants and suppliers that end up popping up to service those plants. And then the hundreds of other businesses that provide professional services, everything from electrical to landscape, that help build those factories out.
Yeah, I think those are all positive things in Alabama's way. As we get finished or almost finished with our conversation, guys, I'm talking with Tripp Watson Law Firm. We're talking about business in Alabama, trends and changes during the pandemic. We could have a whole nother discussion, Tripp, about things that will stick around from a business perspective once the pandemic is concluded. And I guess I want to ask, what are some trends? What are some things, excuse me. I guess I'm getting a little nervous about the championship game next week. So just,
Roll Tide.
We'll get to that before we finish. I guess from a business perspective, what are some things that you're seeing that you think that'll stick around? And we probably already hit on a bunch of those things from a customer service standpoint, but the brick and mortar stores for restaurants and retail, they're always going to be needed to a certain extent, but maybe not as important as they used to be. Do you have any thoughts, or do you see anything in the industries that you think may be sticking around and they're a good thing for business?
Mhm. So I think the trends that we talked about already are kind of the known ones that are going to happen. You're going to start in continuing to see remote work. I think one of the things that's going to be increasingly popular, this is a little bit controversial, but I think you're going to see some more flex work scenarios with not seeing the need to have this rigid 9 to 5 because you're not going to have the physical doors open, but maybe some flexibility in the work schedules that the remote work facilitates. We've seen a lot of promising studies with 4-day work weeks, basically with that cutting an entire day out of work schedule didn't reduce productivity at all and actually greatly increased a lot of satisfaction. I think you're going to see that.
A 4-day work week in America versus, or in the United States versus other parts of the world, it's just, how dare we cut out? But there are countries that have thrived on this for generations, a 4-day work week.
So we'll see. And I think one of my more aggressive, I think we're going to see very interesting changes on car culture. I think this is going to press. I would not be surprised if we saw a lot more single car homes. I would not be surprised if you saw more folks that were able or willing to move closer to work because their work either moved out of a city center or they were moving into a city center. So I think you're going to start seeing less of a clearly defined line between a formal downtown and the suburban area, largely because of that. I think that's a lot of my generation, the millennials that are coming in that have different preferences on what we look for when we but also the changes that we see in work is going to make it so that going into the office 5 days a week for 8 hours a day is not going to be as big of a deal. So I think that's going to have some interesting downstream effects.
Yeah, take our industry. You can. I love the fact that I can do my work pretty much anywhere that I am, whether I'm hiking in the woods or sitting on the beach or wherever I may be. And I live about a mile from my office. Those days I can ride my bike or walk to work. Those are great days, for many reasons. But Tripp, thank you for sharing your expertise and your interest and your experiences about business in Alabama and the trends. And before we get out of here, let's take 30 seconds and talk a little bit with our head, not our heart, about the championship game next Monday. What do you think? What do you see?
I mean, I was a little afraid of another Clemson matchup, especially after the last one. And I was expecting another Clemson matchup, but after the Ohio State game, I don't know where that came from. So I'm a little nervous. Alabama played fairly well. There were some things that we could have done better in the last game, but I'm hoping that that's enough to get over. But that Ohio State quarterback, he scares me a little bit.
Fields is definitely a top 5, maybe even a number 1 pick, depending on which team ends up taking him. But I will tell you that hopefully tonight Devonta will probably be the at least the sentimental favorite. But that's pretty cool for having 2 of the 4 finalists for the Heisman tonight. Ohio State looked very fresh. Well, frankly, they've only played half the games that the SEC and the ACC played this year. And before we get out of here, my good friend Carol Williams just popped on, and she says she hopes more companies, small and large, really embrace virtual work setups. And Carol, I would totally agree with you that seems to be one of the trends. It certainly is, and it's good to hear from you. Carol is an immigration attorney down in South Florida and is just an awesome friend and all over social media, such a giver. But
I think you're going to see a cottage industry growing up over building out home offices. I think you're going to see folks that are having some expertise in getting the camera setups and the light ups. I've even seen it for trial attorneys that are now conducting trials via Zoom. They have these professional consultants coming in charging hundreds of dollars an hour to set up the lighting so that they don't look awful in the courtroom setting. So.
Yeah, and on a side note, there was a recent ABA article that you may have seen about how, not casual, but maybe that's the right word, some attorneys are taking court hearings on Zoom. They're not even wearing a coat or a tie. some lawyers have just gotten so lazy that anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. I hope that,
My last summary judgment hearing, opposing counsel was wearing a button down and a sweater, and that was it.
well, to each his own, but I guess that you're right. Some of the formalities of actually going to a court may or may not translate online and in Zoom hearings. But Tripp, thank you, bud, for spending some time and educating our audience about business in Alabama and trends. It's always good to hear from somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you as always. Nomberg Law live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific. We bring to you different guests in their areas of expertise, and Tripp certainly fits that bill. So you guys have a safe rest of your week, and we'll catch you next Tuesday. Take care.